Yes! Greetings and salutations. It's Dave Duford. Hope you guys are having a fantastic afternoon. Thank you for joining me for another We're Doing It Live performance here. We're going to be specifically talking about how to close 80 final expense policies monthly. What we're going to be doing in this broadcast, this live rendition at least, is going into a deep dive on how to massively scale your final expense activity, whether you're a telesales agent or a face-to-face agent, whether you're a new agent interested to learn the process to scale at extreme levels, or if you're an experienced pro realizing that the way to make money truly in the final expense business is through mass action, at least for most of us. This is probably the right training for you to attend. So a little bit of a rundown here as we get started to kind of paint the picture as to what to expect. This is live as I record this. You might be watching this in the future, but for those of you who are live, I absolutely welcome your questions, comments, criticism, etc. Please use the live chat to throw your questions, comments, criticisms in the chat. I will get to them probably at the end or the tail end of this training. I tend to go on a lot and go into detail. So anything related to what we're talking about, you can talk about into the chat. I'll definitely get to that a little bit later. Or if you're watching, recording this, you can throw a comment into the comment box and I'll answer it personally. And just as a reminder, I do recruit agents nationally. If you like this kind of content, imagine working in DeFord Insurance Group. I do recruit agents nationally in final expense, both telesales, face-to-face, as well as Medicare and Annuities. DavidDeFord.com, DavidDeFord.com/FAQ to learn more. And then also, don't forget, the Elite Agent Summit is coming to Las Vegas as of March 26th to the Top Golf. We're going to have a bunch of top producers come in and talk about how they are successful in final expense, Medicare, etc. If you would like real-life training without any of the drunken Kool-Aid fest that is so common with these events these days, then I highly encourage you to check out our event, EliteAgentSummit.com, for more details. So let's talk about writing 80 final expense policies a month. First of all, who is this for? Like I said, this is really for any of those of you out there who, like myself at one point, were looking for the ultimate strategy to scale up my efforts to write a lot of business and make a lot of money in the final expense space. And at the time when I learned this strategy I'm going to teach you, I was experienced, frustrated because I couldn't close at such high levels that some of the legends in the business close at, but recognized there was a different way and wanted to pursue that strategy, not through maximizing my conversion ratios because my numbers were my numbers, but then to scale my efforts so I could scale my results. This is also if you are brand new and you're looking for kind of the arc of progression in the final expense business, really how to leverage your skill set that you will develop and what is actually possible, because there are agents right now who are doing this. Again, they are the minority. It's hard to find agents that work this hard consistently, but it is something that is possible, that if you've got the work ethic and the desire, that we can teach you and show you how to do it. So the purpose of this training is to do exactly that. I'm going to walk through exactly what it takes to scale your activity to get up to 80 final expense policies written a month. And so that the outcome of this training is you're going to know what the blueprint is in order to make this happen. And of course, there's some things I'm going to kind of talk about to begin with, because 80 policies probably sounds like a month, sounds like pretty crazy. I thought it was when I first heard about agents doing this. And I guess, why would you want to write that much business a month? And my response is, why not? Why wouldn't you want to push yourself outside of your boundaries? Why not push yourself to a whole new echelon of success, to do something that very few agents ever really accomplish, not even just once, but ever in their careers? This makes this business fun when you put out stretch goals that are really challenging and really hard. They inspire you to get out of your comfort zone to go work hard. Plus, other reasons of why write this much business a month. Of course, I think it kind of, if you got some kind of moral compass about what you do in the final expense space and you really believe you're doing well by the people you help, you're helping the bereaved out with money in hand to pay for a funeral, why not do more of that? If you have this capacity and this desire to work really hard and help lots of people, then this is kind of a moral calling to go out to even higher levels of production to help even more people. And plus, peak performance is fun. It was a lot of fun when I was in the field running tons of appointments, 40 plus a week, because I knew few agents were doing it. And the amount of business I wrote was tremendous. And it was a lot of fun helping a lot of people, but really dialing myself in to, doing something that was incredible that really only the top maybe 5 or even 2% do. And another reason to do this much business, before we get into the mindset and then the actual numbers, we'll definitely get into that in a minute, is that, what's nice about final expense, and this is one of the things I teach my agents coming into this business, I teach you guys out there who aren't even with me, you guys need to start thinking beyond just selling final expense. Final expense is really a means to an end, at least how I look at it now in my scope of where I'm at in my career. What I mean by that is I think the real business model in the next 10 years to be really all in on long term is the Medicare side of the business. For me, I got into final expense. I sold final expense for years, but the Medicare side of the business wasn't nearly as appealing as it is now, and as friendly towards agents as it is now. And the beauty about Medicare nowadays is that as a residual-based business, and when you scale up your activity to this extent, you're creating this book of business that as you begin to make that transition into final expense, or I should say Medicare, guess who you're going to call first? All those people who already know, like, and trust you, that bought their policies from you for final expense, because they likely 9 out of 10 of them have a Medicare plan. So they make really good prospects to start with in the Medicare space to get started with. And so Medicare is really important, and this is just another way to kind of build quicker into Medicare. So besides kind of some preliminary reasons of why we do it, let's talk about some mindset issues, because I can sense the spidey senses, right? Me through the camera, you looking at me. Some of you have objections. Some of you have suspicion. Is this possible? Is this a joke? Is this even real? And we've got to fight the mental block that a lot of you probably have to various degrees to set aside whatever resistance that you have to believe that this is actually possible. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things first to kind of set the mindset where it should be. None of this is in any particular order, but there's really three things here that I think are really important mindset-wise. First of all, this scaled-up system to produce 80 final expense policies a week, guess what? It's just more of the same that you're already doing. It's crazy to think about writing, an AP. This might be, 600, 700,000 in final expense business. It might be that much business, which sounds like a crazy amount. But when you look and break down the numbers on a monthly basis and on a weekly and a daily basis, what you will see at these scaled up levels of activity, because it takes more activity to get this kind of policies amount per month, is it's just the same stuff you're already doing. The agent out there who was crushing it, writing 20 apps a week, 80 apps a month, whatever that number is at high levels, look, they're doing the same thing you're doing. They're just doing more of the same, and they all know it at the end of the day. They're like, I'm not doing anything special. I just work really, really, really hard. So from a mindset standpoint, put aside this kind of like idea or concept that this is some kind of, elusive, rare kind of thing that can happen. It's not. It's the same stuff you're doing right now. It's the same stuff you're learning about if you're new. It's just that these agents are running 2, 3, 4 times as much as appointments as the normal agent out there who might be getting 10 or something like that, okay? So what does that all mean? Why is this important? It's because it's the same thing you're doing now, which makes it much easier to broach the idea of writing this much business. You're just going to be doing more of what you're already used to, which makes this whole approach and scaled up opportunity that much more approachable. Number 2, you're a money multiplier at scale or not. And the reason I mentioned this is that ultimately what you do as a final expense agent, you take something, your investment in leads, and multiply it in the form of a multiple of the revenue. You take $500 and you turn it into $2,000 in commissions. You take $1,000, you turn it into $4,000 commissions, and everybody's number is kind of different. But what you realize, again, kind of like what you do at the lower levels is the same thing you do at the higher levels, is that the multiplier effect isn't that much changed when you scale up the activity and you hit a high level number of written policies every single month. That your numbers generally pretty much hold. Because again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. All you're doing to hit 20 apps a week or 80 apps a month is more of the same than what you're doing right now. It's just more of the same. In other words, a big objection to this is the fear people have to invest the kind of money necessary into leads to making this happen. When we're talking about 80 policies a month, that's probably, I'll do the math, 300 or 400 in leads. 100 leads a week, let's say, conservatively. That might be $3,000 a week in direct mail leads, maybe more. And that's scary, okay? And the good news is, again, this isn't something we'll talk about later, but we don't usually start new agents off at this scaled level. We gradually build up and kind of condition the agent just like we would in the gym. We don't load 400 pounds on the bar to squat with. We, over time, progressively increase the weights to condition the body and the nervous system to adapt to the stimulus, right? Likewise, we kind of do the same thing, at least how I look at this scaled up approach. So it's something that I think is comforting, because if your first initial reaction is fear, investing thousands a week in leads, understand that as you develop yourself and have the skill set, all you're doing is more of the same. Kind of the key word today, key phrase today, more of the same. So even though it's a higher amount, you should, if you work the amount required, get the same ratio or return on your investment that you did earlier. Therefore, you're going to amplify your return and make that much more money, okay? And so those are two things you got to understand. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll kind of see the perspective here and why this is a good thing and why this all is very much true. Okay. So face-to-face versus telesales, a very common question asked. Okay, Dave, let's just assume you buy into this whole idea of writing this much application volume a month and final expense. Which is the best path to making that happen? Is it telesales or is it face-to-face? Just tell me which route to go. If I had to choose, which one is the best? My answer is this. It depends on you. It's kind of the same way I look at the face-to-face or the telesales question as a new agent. A lot of new agents come in, they're like, everybody wants to sit at home in their underwear, make phone calls, make money, and never have to leave the house. Like, that's cool. But it's not for everybody. Not everybody's equipped from a personality disposition to sell over the phone, which is why final expense face-to-face is still just as viable as it ever has been, if not more viable than it ever has been. So the answer to the question to which strategy works best really comes down to where your personality and your strengths lie. Are you a telesales agent or a face-to-face agent? In other words, if I was doing telesales right now, I wouldn't change telesales if I wanted to scale up this high. I would still do telesales, and within those confines, figure out a lead strategy. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And pick my poison and scale to the moon and put the activity in necessary to make those numbers work in my favor to hit those goals that I have. Likewise, same thing for face-to-face. Now, in all actuality, and I think this is because this business is traditionally more face-to-face than telesales, the vast majority of people I've seen that have hit numbers close to this or above this have traditionally been face-to-face agents. Why? I just think because the type of agent that does this kind of volume tends to have been doing this business for a while, has the street cred, has developed the skill set, and had the courage to bump up their lead flow. But I don't think that's because it's not possible. Telesales is, from a popularity standpoint, much newer than face-to-face with the advent of the shutdowns and people concerned about being in homes. So telesales is more and more popular. I think we'll see more of that over time. So it doesn't matter either way to me. Now, so let's transition to talking about some of the aspects necessary to hit, again, 80 leads or 80 policies a month. It could be 10, 15, 20, 25. The number really doesn't matter. What matters is how do you really ultimately scale to top levels of activity for top levels of production. So fundamentally, whatever that number is, doesn't really matter. but it's important to understand the aspects that make it all kind of stick together, and we're going to talk about that. So the first thing is you got to talk about leads, okay? Leads are the lifeblood of final expense sales. There's very few top producing agents at high levels that do anything other than buy leads. They may self-generate their own leads, but they pay money to talk to people with a marginal level of interest. So that is not going to change in this massively scaled up strategy to produce a lot of business. In fact, the only thing that's going to change is you're going to buy a ton of leads. A ton of leads. You're going to buy a bunch of them. Why? Because you have to have the requisite volume of leads in order to give yourself the opportunity to book the most appointments, to then turn around to have the numbers on your side to sell the amount of presentations that you need or policies you need. So let's take the 20 a week goal that we have. If I want to write 20 policies a week, I know that for me, my close rate's about 20 to 25%, or I should say conversion rate of direct mail. So for every 4 leads I buy, I'm going to close 1 sale, maybe for every 5, okay? So it's real simple to calculate, if I hold constant the number of direct mail leads, what I need. I need, if I do 20 leads a week, I'm going to sell 4 policies on the low side. Well, I want 5 times that amount, right? 4 times 5 is 20. Well, then I need to have, since it's more of the same, I'm not changing much except the volume, I need 5 times 20 leads, right? So I need to have 100 leads in order to produce 20 policies. And the thing is, like I said, it pretty much stays consistent that is actually the case and what happens. And so point being, you're going to have to go all in on the leads situation. Again, sorry to repeat myself, it's just more of the same. And this is one thing that I commend Family First Life for doing so well, that I had talked about for years, is that this business, I think, of final expense is so much more lucrative. Not worrying so much about getting a 30 or 35% conversion rate on your direct mail leads, but scaling your activity so high that you run tons of appointments and see tons of people, because that's really where the beauty lies. And they really did a great job and continue to do so, teaching that concept to their agents. So point being, at least when it comes to this business, you got to buy a lot of leads to make this happen. Again, there are naysayers that kind of scoff at the notion of buying a lot of leads, and I understand. But what other option do you have? You know, if you're going to do a lot of production, every business out there that does a lot of business of anything has to have a large marketing budget. They have to have a lot of activity going out there that's going to instigate interest in the product. There has to be a lot of money at play to get the requisite number of interested prospects to convert into sales. And this is really just a math equation at the end of the day. You find out what your ratio of close is, and then you multiply it by the number more so of what you're currently doing to get to the number of applications a week that your goal, in this case 20. And what is working now? So let's talk about kind of lead. Now we know we've got to buy a lot of leads, probably a lot more than what we're buying now. What kind of leads work to scale to this appropriate amount of policies a week that we want? Again, it's just more of the same. There's not really a bad lead here. The lead that is currently working for you, my recommendation is to just do more of it. So whether that's digital leads, Facebook leads, live transfers, direct mail, for me, it all works. You just need to do more of it. Now, personally, for me, if I'm face-to-face, my absolute 100% recommendation is to buy direct mail leads. Direct mail leads, what you'll find, I think, that are an advantage relative to digital leads is they're going to be much more consolidated in one particular area. With digital leads like Facebook leads, you tend to be spread out all over the place, okay? And there's a lot more windshield time between appointments, as we'll discover here in a minute. You're going to be running your strategy predominantly off of preset appointments if you're face-to-face. So windshield time, because we're trying to cram so many activities in at once, or appointments in at once, it starts to add up. So by using direct mail, we can really saturate an area and get a lot more leads back per square mile than we can with a digital or Facebook program. So in other words, we can spend more time presenting and closing than we would with a digital strategy, which puts you behind the wheel a lot longer. And therefore, you're not going to be able to run as many appointments. So for me, face-to-face, I want a direct mail lead if I at all can afford it. And then if I'm over the phone, there's really two different strategies that I would be looking at if I wanted to really scale to heavy amounts of production. And either are equivalent in my mind. I would either do a live transfer program where I would just be available on the phone to take any live transfers and have lots of states available so I can maximize my inbounds and basically have more opportunity to take any leads anywhere to sell them over the phone. And then the other option that I would do is some kind of self-generated Facebook marketing program where I controlled the cost per lead and then also had the ability to pre-sell them by selling them on myself, what it is that I do to help them, selling them on me personally with emails and text messages, and encourage them to set up an appointment to where that I can call them. And a lot of them won't show up. About half or so won't show up. But the half that do show up are really good leads and tend to close at a lot higher rate. I would do that and try to set as many of those appointments, as many days as possible to make it happen. So for me, from a lead standpoint, those would be my preferences, but these aren't like the end-all be-all. Again, take what you're working now, and it's likely you can scale that up and get way more out of those leads and volume of leads, and therefore presentations and sales, and hit those kind of goals that you aspire towards. How much should you buy? Again, I think I talked about that earlier as far as a ratio. Again, it's going to come down to roughly, to me, if our goal, think of a number in mind, if that's 20, like in this example, if our goal is to hit 80 a month, and you're going to close about 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5. I prefer to be conservative. I'd rather have too many people to see than too few. So I'm going to try to buy more leads than I have time to work. So I would rather you buy 100 leads a week to make sure you're extremely busy to get the presentation volume in so that you can hit your appointments and close deal volume. So I would buy 100 direct mail a week. For digital leads, what I found when I worked the system is I needed closer to like 125 to 150 a week. This was several years ago when I was in the field. It might be more nowadays, but it's going to be a lot more than you're probably working to a large degree. All right. And we talked also about, and again, a common objection is that's very expensive, several $1,000s in leads. But again, if you really are going to make this jump and start to scale up at high levels of production and buy lots of leads, you should have some street cred. You should be successful at a lower level. And I'll give you a perfect example of somebody who's been an exquisite example of making this happen. I did 2 interviews with a gentleman named Ryan Lodi. If you want to check these out, highly recommend it if you like this concept of massive scaling. Ryan Lodi, I think in 2020, wrote $700,000 in like 9 months, straight up final expense face-to-face, all during COVID, like pretty much in a urban, suburban area. All right. All odds against him, crushed it. And what Ryan did in this instance, he was buying like 150 plus leads a week to do this, running 70 appointments. I mean, just an animal. But before that, when he got started, he started with 10 leads a week. I think Ryan did like 10 leads a week for several months. It might have been even 6 months. And then he got a fire lit under his rear and started scaling up. He wanted to do more. He wanted to do better. Started doing 20 leads a week, 30 leads a week. And as he kept his production percentages and ratios the same, as the leads went up, I said, hey, keep going. Let's go to 40. Let's go to 50. Why not? They're going to stay the same. And lo and behold, in that first year, I think he wrote 400,000 plus and 80 plus leads a week. But it took time to get there. And I think that's my main point, is that it took time to develop the confidence, the skill set necessary, and to get in the mode of selling successfully. So understand that we're not asking you new people to do this right out the gate. But as you see yourself getting success, don't be afraid of success, okay? Because this business is just really about, when it comes to scale, is about doing more of what already works. And you've, again, got to get uncomfortable, take that risk financially. But I assure you, I've seen it time and again in my agency. Usually your ratios stay the same and you make more because it's all the same. You're just doing more of it. So, presentations. Let's talk a little bit about presentations. Absolutely, Raymond. Thank you very much. Let's talk about how the presentations change when you're writing 20 applications a week. How in the world can you do 20 applications a week and not change your presentation? So this is one thing I will concede. Your presentation will change just slightly to accommodate the more volume of now presentations that you're running, right? Because in order to run 20 appointments, let's say you have a 50% close ratio, that means you got to have 40 appointments to probably write 20 applications. Pretty safe to say, right? So 40 appointments over the course of a week is a lot of appointments when you factor in drive time or, buying leads, calling up, qualifying, etc. What do you do differently in the presentation itself? So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, probably the biggest thing that's going to change for you when you're writing 20 apps a week or 80 apps a month is that you're not going to do as much rapport building. I found this was probably the most immediate thing that changed for me that I didn't plan on. I just didn't have the time to do small talk with people. And it soon dawned on me that you didn't need it anyway, that rapport building is pretty much overrated as you develop yourself into an advanced agent that does a lot of activity. You don't need to do the 5 to 10 minute talk with Mildred about her fish in the wall and grandkids. I mean, you can if you want to, and it's probably safe to do some of that, especially 5 minutes at least as a new agent. But as an experienced agent, realize just is unnecessary. You can go out there and make the requisite, minimally acceptable amount of rapport building in a matter of seconds, okay? So I would come in, for example, into these presentations, make them laugh a little bit, usually talk about the dog. That's a Chihuahua, 5-pounder, trying to chew my ankle off and barking at me. They laugh a little bit, small talk about the weather, and then I'm down to business. Like within 30 to 60 seconds, I am talking about selling them an insurance policy, okay? Because I knew I had them. Most people make a judgment call out on you within seconds, okay? And there's very little that you can do to change that. So if you're solid and strong from the beginning, know that you don't need to do the 5 to 10 minute song and dance routine. And you wouldn't want to anyway, because if you're running 12 appointments a day times 10 minutes, that's 120 minutes. That's 2 hours of small talk. Are you kidding me? How about you cut that in half, save an hour, add a couple more appointments in it, or better yet, squeeze it down to 2 minutes, and then find yourself in a position where you've got 2 hours of extra time. Like that added up over the course of a month, that's 40 hours of talk time, right? If I'm working 5 days in the field every week. So it's really important, kind of on a major note, that you do start paying attention even more to every wasted second that you have, because you are in a fight against the sun to see every single person that you can before it's too late. So number one, there's less rambling rapport. You usually get right to work in order to see the people. And frankly, you're going to be under kind of some stress too, at least starting like, oh my God, I got 12 appointments. I got to talk. We can't do this BS. Let's get right down to work, right? So you kind of be stressed and kind of in a good way, focused on getting to what matters, which is the pre-qualifying, getting the right to work. And because of that, one other thing that changes for a lot of agents is you tend to realize that it's important, it's incredibly important to front load and pre-qualify as quickly as possible. When you've got 12 people, maybe some days I was working 15 appointments a day. So if I had 15 appointments a day, I was booking them 45 minutes apart. I would say about 11 would show up, right? So I had to see 11 people. I want to know within 10 minutes to 15 minutes max if this prospect, this suspect, this person across the table, this lead, is actually going to have a high odds chance of buying. I don't want to spend an extra second with somebody that doesn't. I don't care. If they don't want to buy, fine. I'm out of there. And in fact, you would see me when I would do ride-alongs with my agents. Like as soon as I found out they were unqualified, I'd stand up, shake their hand, and I'm making my motion towards the door. And like my ride-alongs would be sitting there like, what do I do? It's like, come on, let's go find a real prospect. So my point is that we don't want to waste time with people who aren't qualified. If you're not already heavily pre-qualifying in your sales presentation and you like the idea of scaling, you should do it anyway, because I hate you wasting your time. I hate wasting mine. Well, I'm sure you do too. So when we pre-qualify, I want to know, for example, within 10 minutes, if this client has a desire for coverage, they have an actual clearly and coherent need for what it is that we have and what it is that they need as far as coverage goes. Their health is good enough, which usually it is. They've got a bank account to let me draft, because I'm not taking anything other than the bank draft. And they've got a budget they 100% agree to giving me to give them a policy. If they don't meet one of those pieces of criteria, I'm gone. I'm ghosting them. I'm disappearing. Okay? And you should too. And you will find the desire to do this so much more when you've got 12 to 15 people a day to see. Okay, so that does change if you're not already heavily doing that. And again, we're looking for a reason, in other words, to sooner than later disqualify the prospect. I don't want to deal with people who don't want it. I don't want to deal with people who are unserious, who don't care, who are flippant. I want real, live, qualified prospects. Anything else than that is a waste of time. Now, from a carrier standpoint, things do tend to change a little bit too. So it's really important, again, every second matters, right? When we're running so many appointments a day. So we want to use carriers in a face-to-face manner that doesn't require a phone interview, okay? I hate to admit it, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't tell anybody. I know this is public. I used to write a lot of business with this type of strategy with Transamerica. Why? Because Transamerica did not have a phone interview. It was just a paper app. I could sign it, get it done, fax it in later. I was pretty good on underwriting, so I didn't worry too much about it getting approved. But nowadays, we have the added pleasure of using application processes that, A, don't require a phone interview, B, are completely electronic, so it removes the amendment risk that paper apps used to have, and C, will issue you an instant decision immediately. It's much better in this business as a whole, scaled up to the moon or not, to use carriers face-to-face, more on telesales in a minute, that render a decision instantly, that don't require a phone interview, because that's less time per sale, which means you can effectively manage your time better to run more appointments, okay? So I would like, if I was in this position nowadays, I'd probably be writing Prosperity Life, Rural Neighbors of America, Guarantee Trust Life as much as I can, certainly AIG for great guaranteed issue, EAP. All these are EAP processes. I think GTL, they may have a phone interview. It's like a couple of minutes long. It may not have it just maybe for telesales. Don't remember quite off the top of my head. And I'd probably just try to plug as much of business into those as I can. Maybe Aetna, CVS Health. All of those have really solid processes without phone interview requirements. And you can just bang out apps like it's nobody's business. Okay. And again, work on running more appointments and staying ahead of schedule. If I'm doing telesales, I'm probably going to be picking carriers that have the least touchy phone interview process. Again, this is harder here to do because most of these carriers require phone interviews. But I would be trying as much as possible to write with Aetna, CVS Health. They don't have a phone interview. It's really easy to do over the phone. GTL would be another choice I'd write a lot with, maybe Great Western to a certain extent. But you're going to have probably do a little bit more phone interviews just by default because you're not there in person with them, and the companies are going to want you to go through that process of a phone interview for the most part. So it's harder to avoid. But again, the application processes with the less routine that you have to complete are the better, both face-to-face and over the phone. Some other things that do change presentation or sales-wise at high levels of production is the appointment setting process face-to-face, whether you're door knocking or calling. And here's how this changes. So first of all, I found at high levels of production that the door knocking element of the business is gone. It's gone. If you're really running a system like what we're talking about and working 5 or 6 days a week, you're not going to have any time to seriously do any door knocking. Maybe once in a blue moon. But when you're running 12, 15 appointments a day, you're against the clock to get ahead of schedule and get every one of those appointments before it's too late. You're not going to find the time like you used to door knock, okay? So door knocking tends to not be as prominent as you were as a agent with less leads. Door knocking's great. The problem with door knocking at high scale is it does become inefficient. You know, what's the most you could take in door knock a week? Probably 40 or 50 leads. But it's inefficient. I'd rather have preset appointments by double the leads and know I'm going to run 40 appointments in a week instead of maybe 25. Okay. So that is one thing that tends to drop. Also, one thing I highly recommend for a highly scaled up strategy is that you absolutely want to seriously consider outsourcing your appointment setting activities. This is the one strategy as an agent that outsourcing, it should be very simple to cover the cost, usually with maybe a sale. One sale a week will cover it, but what you get in return is you buy back so much of your time to run appointments and see people. Again, think about in your business as a final expense agent, what activity pays the bills? Think about it. Is it processing applications? Is it setting appointments? Or is it running presentations? I'm not saying those other two, it's running presentations, and I'm going to explain why. The first two, they're important. They're critical. But they're processes that other people can do. What pays the bills is belly-to-belly appointments as a face-to-face agent or being on the phone talking to people for telesales. But for face-to-face, as we're talking about now, I want you to be thinking about how can I realistically see as many appointments and just run appointments all day? Because that ultimately is what pays the bills and gets the deals done. And the truth is, there are way more many people out there that can set your appointments at a decent rate versus actual people like yourself that can make the deals done. In other words, it should be a pretty simple process to find a halfway decent appointment setter or two to set your appointments, keep you busy so that you can do what matters most. Again, I personally had two appointment setters at my peak level of production when I was doing something similar to this. John Dean, who is running probably 60 to 80 Medicare sales a month now, he has a professional appointment setter running and setting appointments for him. He doesn't do it anymore because it sucks a lot of time out of you that you could just run more appointments and just make a sale or two to cover the cost, and the rest is just gravy. Way I look at it, okay? So consider scaling up, when you scale up, to also outsource the appointment setting. If you're interested, I've got an article that goes into detail, my appointment setting outsourcing system. I don't sell it. It's just a blog post, and it'll teach you kind of how to do this whole thing in a longer format. So email me at my website or throw something in the comments, not the chat, but the comments saying you want it, and I'll link it up. Now, if you're doing telesales, there are a few ways that make the scaling up process, running more presentations possible. You may want to consider moving from a strictly outbound strategy to an inbound strategy. Again, like I said earlier, maybe a preset appointments program where the appointments are preset using a calendar online. They're pre-sold to show up at the times. That can make your time a little bit more efficient. And then also using fronters. Some agencies do, or agents have fronters that qualify the lead and transfer them for you. That's a little more complicated. I don't see a lot of people who do that, but that is something here and there over the years I've heard is something that is a possibility. Now, as far as time management goes, again, some of you probably heard me mention earlier, I book my appointments 15 a day, 45 minutes apart. And some of you are already thinking like, what's wrong with you, Dave? How can you run any appointments in this business 45 minutes when you factor in the interview, the details, the follow-up, everything, right? It seems kind of inconceivable. Well, what I'm going to give you are kind of my pro tips to making that strategy actually work. So first of all, we know, and this is how doctors' offices run. You ever been to a doctor's office and you're like sitting there for an hour or two and you're like pissed off and angry? They double and triple book appointments every 30 minutes or 15 minutes. That's typically the approach most doctors' offices do. Why do they do that? Because they know, looking at their show rates, that a certain percentage of people won't show up. And they just assume the numbers tend to pan out, so they just double and triple book, knowing that, hey, if they don't book for that segment, that's lost revenue potential. So they overcome the risk of no-shows by booking more than they can handle and just dealing with the consequences. And while we get pissed off about it, it's rare if you do a good job as a doctor that your clients are going to switch on you, okay? So likewise, the same strategy absolutely works here. Now, we don't double or triple book, not at all. But what I do instead is while I book 45 minutes apart running face-to-face, and if you do the math, you can get 15 appointments in. If you start at 8 in the morning, you should be able to get 15 total. What I do personally is book appointments using the cable man appointment setting strategy. So here's how this works. If you ever had anybody install fiber optics, cable, etc., what do they tell you? I'm going to be there exactly at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? No, never. More like I'll be there between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. They give you a range of arrival time. And yeah, it irritates us, but if we really want the thing, we're going to show up and wait for them to show up. Likewise, if we're running appointments selling final expense, especially in the field, but over the phone too if you incorporated this as well, What I do in what my appointment setters said script-wise was, hey, Dave is going to be there at 8, but in case he gets stuck in traffic or something happens, give him up to 8:45 to get there. Or, I'm sorry, 9 o'clock to get there. Either way, though, if everything's fine, he'll see you at 8, but up to 9 if necessary. Have a great day. So booking that appointment, they knew I was not going to be there right on the spot at 8, and if it was 5 minutes late, they wouldn't leave. They knew and have already set the expectation that 8 to 9 is the appointment time. And what that grants me is the opportunity to not be so stressed if I'm a few minutes behind, because now I have an hour arrival window. So that means the client understands I might be there a little later, and therefore that affords me so much flexibility in arrival time. So if I do sit down with a Mr. and Mrs. Jones and I write them both up, and that thing takes an hour and a half, and they're 15 minutes down the road, I get there at 9:45. Well, we told them we'd be there at 8:45 to give us up to 9:45. So they're still there, and they're not mad. And what happens, too, is that it's rare that all 15 appointments are actually going to show up and be qualified and buy, okay? We know our numbers are going to show us that out of 15, maybe 11, or if you're lucky, 12 actually show up, okay? So now I'm really only seeing 12 people a day. And then out of those 12, maybe 4, 5, or 6 of them, depending on the day, are not qualified. Well, using my strategy, I'm out in 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops, right? So I'm really looking for those 5 or 6 people that are going to buy, that are highly interested, that are qualified, and I'm going to spend as much time with them as I can. And those usually don't end up being all back-to-back. They tend to be spread through the day. So what happens is I show up, I'm out in 20 minutes. I get to the next one actually a little bit early, and I'll start an appointment an hour early. Look, it's okay to show up early, guys. It's better than just wasting time and not doing anything. I'll show up early, sit down and talk with them. I maybe they're not qualified. I go to the next one. I'm in there an hour and a half. I'm now late if I didn't set the window, but I did, so I can arrive on time. They no-show me. Now I'm caught up and back to appointments on schedule, right? So things tend to work themselves out. And what I found many times is a lot of the times I found running this many appointments, I was actually ahead of schedule at the end of the day. My last appointment would be at 8 o'clock at night, but I'd be there at 6:30. That happened probably 4 out of 5 times. It was crazy, which I don't understand why, but it's just the way it worked. So time management-wise, the cable man approach makes life easy. We know we're going to have no-shows, so we just factor those, we bake those in to the cake, right? And we run our schedule knowing that stuff's going to happen, okay? And then last but not least here, I guess that's pretty much it. I had some notes here on money management, but it's really the same thing. You know, it's a lot of money to do this, of course. You got to buy a lot of leads. There's a huge financial investment, but you really don't start there. You work your way up to it gradually through experience and developing the self-confidence and having a mentor that says it's okay. Let's take this risk. Let's take this chance. It's a measured risk because it's just the same stuff you've already been doing. It's not brand new, right? So you got the odds in your favor, and you just need somebody that helpfully encourage you along. And again, the moral of the story here, guys, is, as you know, for me, the final expense business, if you're going to do this business, the best way for the average agent to increase their net income is not by going from a 25 or a 50% conversion in home to a 90% conversion. There are agents who produce at that level, but they're what we call animals. They're unicorns. Okay, where they sit with 10 people and close 9. I've had them in my agency. They're rare, but I guess they exist. But the vast majority of us who maybe we're not studs, like just naturally gifted with sales. I'm not. I trained myself to this point. But we're not bad either. We know we're good. The easiest way to increase our net income is by just doing more of what already works. And having the courage to take a chance and just do more work. That's really what this business comes down to. Is that if in the final expense space, if you really want to blast your income beyond, low 6 figures, 100,000 to 150,000, the way to do that is to run 30, 40 plus appointments a week, do the same type of action that you do right now, just at a scaled level, and therefore close at the same rate that you had been, and find that your net income is now up higher. Okay. And that is how you do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this training segment on how to write 80 policies in final expense sales a month. Now let's take some questions from the audience. So if you guys are still watching out there, thanks for sticking with me. Throw your questions in the chat. I'm going to go through any of the questions that you got. So I'm going to start from the top, move my way down. As soon as I'm at the end of the questions, I'm done. I'm tapping out. But in the meantime, let's get going. Gary, what's up? Thank you. Welcome. Hey, Yvette, how you doing? 123 from LA. How you doing? Currently at IMO. Are you guys an IMO at your agency? Hey, Tyrone. Yes, I'm an IMO. I do have an upline. It's called 360 Financial Group. That's where most of my contracts go through. But as an entity or an agency, I operate in my own way. I'm unique and separate on the final expense side from IMO. I have my own brand, my own philosophy, my own process, and that's good because there's a sense of autonomy. I'm not run by an MLM and told what to do and all that stuff. I do my own thing, always have since I first started building an agency since 2013 or so. Okay. Brian, hey, Susie, what's up? How does the residual work with Medicare? Great question, Taroni. Very simple. You essentially are paid right now this year. We actually got a raise from the government this year. We get paid $273 a year for the life the policy is on the books. $24 a month is about the monthly as earned commission. I mean, that's about what you get paid a month for life. You may think that's not very inspiring or amazing. If so, you just need to do the math a little bit. Then you'll find it's pretty compelling. For example, if you have 1,000 Medicare Advantage clients, and that's what Medicare Advantage pays, you just multiply $24 roughly times 1,000. You get $24,000 every single month from 1,000 clients. And yeah, people die, people change plans, but what many agents discover very quickly in the Medicare space is a lot of your prospects, a lot of your clients will refer more business, and you likely won't stop working entirely, so you're going to still write business and work leads. But the point is, Medicare pays a lifetime residual. It doesn't take nearly as much work as far as claims management and servicing as something like property and casualty does. You can make a significant income in Medicare Advantage and not work like a dog your whole life. You have to pay the price in the beginning for sure. But over the long term, it's not only a more lucrative product to sell, but you can unlock the lifestyle that all of us want. I look at money as a means to an end. The end being a leisurely life, pursuing things other than the grind. Okay, I love to work, but I like other things too. You're probably the same way. I don't like money. I don't pursue money for the sake of money. It's kind of I don't know. I like money, but I don't know. That's just not fulfilling. It's not. But money is a tool to unlock the things in life that we want. And it's not just an amount of money. It's also the way in which you work to gain the money. You can make a lot of money in insurance, but a lot of other products require that you work 80 hours permanently in order to make that kind of money. Medicare, in the beginning, you're going to have to really hustle hard for a couple years, but you can lay off the gas a little bit, and find that you now have you have time to do other things, which is why me and my agency, we absolutely encourage our agents to be seriously thinking about Medicare on an intermediate to long-term basis. Once you're established in final expense, Medicare is the perfect hand-in-glove product to cross-sell. Your clients all have Medicare for the most part in the final expense world. It's a simple sale. It's not hard to convince somebody to help them get better benefits than they currently have. And we're at the tail beginning of an enormous trend for the next 10, 15, maybe 20 years, worth tens of thousands of people every week retire at 65 and start Medicare. And now is the time to get in while it is still viable. So there's my sales pitch to you. Hey Dave, thanks for the content. Welcome, Raymond. Hey Joseph, if you're going to sell 80 a week, isn't an appointment setter bust? Yeah, you must have wrote that before we talked about it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a must, and that would be 80 a month. But it makes life easier, and it's an investment. It frees your time, and it's well worth the investment. Hey Yvette, I found out pre-qualifying up front is so important. Don't assume they have a checking account like I did last week. Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than running a whole appointment to find out that they really aren't interested, or they already got life insurance, or they don't have a bank account, right? They just got bra or money in their bra, like one lady I saw. Actually, we could take that as direct bill back in the day. She's probably still paying on it, but we don't You don't want that kind of money. You want a bank account to draft it out of. And but you want to find the stuff out early, right? Because your time is the most precious asset on the face of the planet. Even the most richest billionaire, who is it now? Warren Buffett or Elon Musk, like, despite all the money they have and the power that comes from it, they cannot buy back a second of the time that's now in the past, right? So it's the most valuable asset, and we should use it to utilize and help those people who truly need it, and not to waste on those who don't or can't make it work. So the ROI for leads is 4 to 1 to 5 to 1. Yeah, just somewhere in there. It just depends. You know, I have agents that ROI 8 to 1 plus in the final expense arena. I've seen agents successfully scale really high at a 3 to 1 return on investment. 4 to 1 is kind of the standard fare where we want to shoot for. Any less than 3 to 1, you're probably not working hard enough, frankly. And any more than 4 to 1 is gravy, and great if you can hit it. But again, this is the thing what I was talking about, Brian. We don't have to have an 8 to 1 ROI to be successful. All you need is a basic number. You have to just have the numbers in your favor to a good enough extent, and then you just scale good enough. That's the trick in this business. That's what I learned about 2014. I was like, well, that's pretty simple. You just buy a bunch of leads, and you can keep a decent but not great close rate. Sold. I didn't have to figure out how to say things in a way that was very hard to do in reality to convert anymore. You know, it's much better to take what you're already good at and do more of it. Hey, Dave, I have, if I want to sell 5 policies a week, about how many age leads you recommend as I dial? As many as you can afford. Again, man, age leads vary. Is it a month old? Is it a year old? Is it 10 years old? You know, is it a digital lead? Is it direct mail? Buy as much as you can. Again, I look at that more as an ROI perspective. If I'm putting $500 a week into age leads and I can make $2,500 in commissions, that's good money. Okay. And the ROI tends to be a little bit higher, even though the policy count isn't necessarily for an age lead system, because age leads are cheap. I mean, it's just basically glorified cold calling to some extent. But to me, just max out what you can afford and call and dial to your heart's content. Are we able to hire agents contracting with you? Yes, but you have to have street cred. In other words, RJ, I don't know what your experience is, but I'm not an MLM that mass recruits others to mass recruit. I have no interest in that. I think that's part of the problem with this business, is there's too much of that. Instead, I had a conversation with a gentleman earlier today. I said, look, I support agency building, but please learn this business experientially. You're not going to keep good talent if you don't know what you're doing, right? Like somebody who has talent or capability for success in this business, when they find out that you don't have any firsthand experience or knowledge in the system itself, why? They're going to be like, well, I'm not going to work with this guy. You can't take me to the level that I want to, right? But experience success for yourself. And I think, first of all, if you're selling insurance, the one thing that happens when you start recruiting is that you now co-sign on everybody's debt that comes aboard. So if you're already out there selling and getting success, you're kind of protecting yourself from the potential of having to pay for the guy's chargebacks if he's a deadbeat and doesn't pay. Okay? If you're not doing that and you're not selling and you haven't been successful, you're at a much higher level of risk that you really don't want to be in. Okay? What about mixing in Medicare and index annuities? Yeah, that's a potential, Vito. I'm sure there's agents out there selling probably more in the Medicare supplement side of the business and then cross-sell annuities. It's, annuities isn't a volume game. It's you got to have volume of presentations to find annuities, but it's not like half of your presentation is going to close. You're going to have to do a lot of presentations, find a few handful of annuities, but obviously they pay so well, it doesn't really matter. Just a different business model. Hey, Chris, all right, hat trick time, baby. More like 4, right? Come on, man. It's just, 5? Come on, you got more than that. You got California now. It's only 2 o'clock over there, Chris. No excuses. What about referrals from FX sales? Very little. I get them occasionally, and I haven't written in a couple of years, but I probably got a good bit after a few years of selling, maybe like 1 or 2 a month. But you're not going to get unsolicited referrals as commonly as you would Medicare. I never really teach, as you've probably found out, Brian, going through the sales training. I don't really teach a lot of referral training because you don't need to if you're buying enough leads. And what happens with referral training and final expense is you'll get like referrals on the other side of town or in another county that's outside of where your leads are, and you become very inefficient, having to drive out to see those people and come back. Not a problem if you're doing telesales. But for me personally, I'm not against referrals, but it's easier to scale up and control your activity a little better just by scaling up and buying more leads. Do I sell leads? No, I typically refer agents out to third-party vendors that work with me to buy leads. I do not want to be in the leads business. Terrible business. Mark, on direct mail leads, is it best to call for an appointment or face-to-face door knock? Yes, to both. Whatever you need to do, whatever you can do. If you're a new agent, I would do both. If you don't like the phone, just door knock. You'll get more conversions just by door knocking. It's easier to convince somebody in your home if you're face-to-face versus over the phone. Setting the appointment to see them later. But I would try to do both. Both are important skill sets to develop. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, it's an hour in. I think we've accomplished what we wanted to. I hope this inspires you to take some massive action. This business is full of opportunity, and it absolutely is worth putting all of your effort, your heart, mind, and soul in. I do wish you well and success in this business, scaled up or not. And if I can help you learn more about working with DeFord Insurance Group, then go to daviddeford.com/FAQ to learn more. If you have any comments, questions, leave them in the comments below or just send me a message on my website. I'll be happy to reach out to you. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow, make sure that you stick around to watch our seminar marketing strategy video. I'm actually going to be talking in detail how to generate business without any lead costs from free seminars. So if you like the idea of that, you don't like paying money for leads, but you want to generate leads at little to no cost in a very convenient way using seminar marketing, then you'll want to stick around for that. So make sure you look for it. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all have a good rest of your day, and thanks for watching. Bye.